Welcome to The Soul's Journey with your host, Tracy Escobar. The Soul's Journey tells the story of everyday people who overcome life's toughest lessons and want to use their voice to share and give hope to others walking a similar path. These are stories of hope, stories of healing, stories of empowerment. So now, please welcome the host of The Soul's Journey, Tracy Escobar.
Hey everybody, and welcome back to The Soul's Journey right here on Bold Brave TV Network. Super excited. Today we have a returning guest. So my very first episode, we had Laura Hendricks on, and we talked a lot about adult-child estrangement. But she has more to tell about her story. And I think the reason me and her clicked so much because we have such similarities kind of in our story. And so it's kind of like connected us a little bit. And so I'm having her come back on to continue the story, but this time we're going to talk, and so I'm going to put a trigger warning out there for a lot of you. Trigger warning, we're going to talk about sexual abuse because I wanted to look at the stat before the show and I didn't get a chance to, but I don't know about you, but every woman I talk to, they have some sort of sexual abuse trauma. And so it is so prevalent. I just think we should talk about it. So I'm going to bring on Miss Laura Hendricks. Welcome back to the show, Miss Laura.
How are you?
Yeah, surviving. It's Friday. It's been a week, but we are surviving and we're back today. Thank you for coming back on. I really, truly do appreciate it. It's hard. You know, when I first started this show, it's really interesting because I knew things had to be talked about and I knew people needed a place to have a voice because we've been shut down so much of our life. Don't talk about this. You know, we come from a generation of secrets. I don't know about you, but you know, the generation before me, it's all about secret, keep things a secret. And I just think we should be talking about things more. But when I started this show, I thought it'd be so easy to find people, but I'm finding people are still stuck in the silence. They still don't want to talk about it. And then they don't want to talk about it publicly, right? And we learned from a couple episodes ago that there's some lashback that we'll get from going public about some of the things that we're going to talk about. So I want to start the show by apologizing in advance to anybody we may offend or trigger. That's not the purpose of this show, but it's to give us a voice and to give other women a voice. And let's talk about it because we don't talk about what happens after the fact, right? And the years to come and how it changes people and what it does to people and how it affects friendships, relationships. It affects a lot. And if people talked about it more, maybe we would have had more knowledge back in the day. But we didn't grow up in a world of social media, Google, right? We didn't have the internet. Gosh, I don't know about you. You know, I'm a Gen X, so I had encyclopedias.
Yeah. Oh, the Encyclopedia Britannicas.
Yes, that was my Google. If I wanted to know anything, I had to go to the bookshelf and pull out an encyclopedia. So we didn't know about this, right? We didn't know about therapy. No one talked about it. We came from such a different generation. And I just don't know if the newer generation realizes that. So if they say, you know, where is this generation? Where is Gen X? Why aren't they talking? Well, we were never allowed. We were the generation that was seen, not heard, right?
That's
so
right.
it is really hard for us. So this show is about that. Let's talk. Let's give us a voice and let's share our stories. And let's talk about how it affected us so that we can help hopefully spread some light into the world and share it with other women and hopefully give them some knowledge that they're not alone. There's hope and hopefully give them some resources that they can go to. So with that, Ms. Laura, thank you for coming and willing to share your story because it's not easy. I love that you and I connected because I feel that there's already a bond there, right? We've already got so much similar things kind of going on. So I really, really appreciate you coming. And I'm going to kick it off to you and let you share your sexual trauma story. And I know it all started in the military, right? So I'm going to kick it off to you. And as much of the story as you want to share, I'm going to allow you to share. And it's interesting. And I'm going to preface this. Although I was not in the military when mine happened, it was by military people. So it's very interesting that we have a connection there as well. So without further ado, Laura, share your story with the world.
Yeah. Well, I joined the military when I was 19. And when I got into basic training, I was harassed by a drill sergeant. And I have this inscription in my basic training yearbook said, I wish we would have had more time together, blah, blah, blah. And so that was just in basic training. I was a private, he was an
Okay.
E6. And then I went on to AIT and I was harassed in AIT by various soldiers. And then when I got into Fort Lewis I was in the HHC 9th Cavalry Brigade at Fort Lewis.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember walking in there and I remember what I was wearing. It was a white skirt with blue polka dots and then a white top. I remember walking into the barracks and I felt like a guppy in a Shark Tank.
Did you?
I was
Wow.
harassed. I was 19. It was 1990, 1989, 1990-ish. I was, very young. And I just remember being harassed every single day by men and women.
Both.
Every day.
Every day.
Yes. Every day. And then when in the barracks, third floor barracks, it was half the floor was men, half women. So all the women were on one end, men on the other, and the women had their own or we called it a latrine. And
Mm-hmm.
so I went in there, the showers were exposed. So you walk in, the right was the sinks, left was the toilets, and then you walk around the wall opposite the sinks, and there were two showers. The first was exposed with a wall between the first and second showers. And I was standing in the first shower. I was washing my hair, and there was a medic standing there watching me take a shower. He
Really?
had, yes, a medic that I worked with, someone I was friends with, and he had a drink in his hand and a red cup, one of those, I forgot what they're called. And I ran behind the wall and I said, get the fuck out. And he kind of laughed and sauntered out. I told someone, I reported it. And I'm not saying this is a racial thing. He was African American. It doesn't matter the race. When I told our first sergeant was African American and our company commander was Caucasian, and they let him out with an honorable discharge and never did an investigation.
Wow.
And when it did happen, I told my sergeant, I'm not going to call her name out. And I said, I've got to tell. And she said, it doesn't matter if you tell, they're not going to do anything.
Really?
So, yeah, so I knew right then and there the military would not protect. Like I said, it was way back when. We didn't talk about
Yeah.
military sexual trauma. We did not discuss it between ourselves. There was no groups, no Facebook, no social media. There was nowhere to turn, and the military didn't protect us. So then what happened is a lot of the CQs, which is called charge of quarters, they were E4 on up, and they would take the master key, and I had 3 of them come into my room unannounced, basically looking to hook up, and I would tell them to leave, and they would. And this one particular person came into my room. I told him to leave both times. He did. And I always remember seeing him watch me walk around the barracks, or I'd be on the first floor by all the offices where the first sergeant and company commander sat. And I always remembered him watching me, but then I ended up getting engaged to his best friend. So my rapist name, I don't want to, we'll just say the first initial is like S. And
Okay.
then I got engaged to someone with the first initial of T, because I'm not going
Okay.
to call out names. I'm trying to protect,
I know.
myself primarily. And
Sure.
so I got engaged to T, who was best friends with S, and who was the weirdo. And we would all hang out, and I thought nothing of it because S had a little boy under the age of 1. S was in a relationship, so they lived off post. They got housing allowance. And so T and I, my fiance and I would go over by S's house, and S's fiance or girlfriend was a stripper. So she was at the club working. The baby was at home. I love this baby. And we went over there, and S said to my fiance, hey, can you go check on my fiance at the club to see what's going on? And he said, do you mind? And I said, no. And as soon as my fiance left, and I can tell you exactly how this apartment was laid out. You
It's
walked in,
crazy
to the
how we
right was,
remember. It's sorry. This is crazy how we remember those details. I'm just gonna say.
yeah,
Okay, go ahead. Mm-hmm.
absolutely,
Mm-hmm.
absolutely. And so as soon as my fiance left, I didn't think anything was off. The baby was asleep in the bedroom because it was after 9 or 10 o'clock, etc. And S said to me, well, you and your fiance, my best friend, you can sleep in our room because his girlfriend was going to be getting off at around 2 in the morning. And I said, okay. And so my fiance left. I remember S was standing in an arched doorway going into the bedroom. And
Okay.
I said, well, I think I'm just going to go lay down. And I squeezed past him because he was kind of round around the middle, like Winnie the Pooh, kind of roundish.
Okay.
And I squeezed past him because the doorway was it was a normal archway. And I went in, closed the door, shut the door. You walked in the bedroom. Bed was upper right in the
Yeah.
corner. And then on the left were a bunch of big windows, no curtains, a dresser below the windows. And now I'm going to tell you actually what happened. It's kind of graphic, but these are the details. So the next thing I know, I'm in bed. I have my pajamas on. The door opens, and I thought it was my fiance, and it wasn't. And he was on top of me. And then the rape started happening, and all I kept thinking was the baby's asleep in his room. And I said no, and the baby's asleep in his room. And oh, I couldn't believe it. He stopped, went to the dresser, pulled out a dildo, his wife's dildo. She was a stripper. And I'm thinking, this cannot be happening. He said, put this inside of you, and forced me to insert it, flipped me over, and sodomized me.
Wow, I'm so sorry, Laura.
And
Whew.
so I remember, because I was only 19, I wasn't familiar with anal sex. I was very young, and I was raised Catholic, so it's not like I wasn't aware of it. Just not something I had thought of or considered. And so he finished, took the toy out, sat on the side of the bed, wiped it, wrapped it up in probably a dirty towel or t-shirt, put it back in the dresser, and left the room. And all I kept thinking was, during when it was happening, I kept thinking my fiance is going to come back, and if he sees this, he's going to believe this was consensual, because men would never believe their best friend would rape their fiance.
Right. Right.
So all I remember was turning over, laying in the corner of the bed towards the wall, thinking, I hope to God I'm just gonna pretend like I'm asleep, because I don't want my fiance to try to touch me when he comes back. I've got to deal with this later. The baby, I can't call anyone because we're all in the military. The baby was asleep. He was under one. His mom's a stripper. If I call and he goes to prison, this kid's gonna be left in a situation, this baby. And I loved my family members, and I thought, I can't do this to this baby, and I'll deal with it later. And the next day we woke up, I saw his face, he smiled at me, we walked out and went back to the barracks. And because of what had happened initially with the shower scene,
Yeah.
and my sergeant saying they're not going to do anything, I knew the military would not help me. So that's what happened to me.
Whew. So you never got a chance to have your justice, report it, nothing?
I did,
Oh,
but
you did?
it took 20 years. So the
Oh,
10 years
wow.
after, right. So my fiance and I ended up breaking up, but he ended up being my daughter's biological father.
Okay.
And so we reconnected, and he was married to this woman. I'm not going to say her first name. And I said, do you remember what happened to S, the man who raped me? She said, yeah, he just spent 9 years in prison because he raped a woman when he got out of the military.
Oh my
And I
God.
said, well, he raped me too. She says, well, okay. And that was it.
That was it.
And for and then we connected because we did DNA, and connected with the two of them, and my daughter connected with her siblings. We went for years without DNA.
Yeah.
The I kind of hooked up with two different people. He was one, and she
Yeah.
was his. And then what happened was is I asked them the following 10 years, do you know where he's at? Can you help me find the affidavit for the crime? I wanted to see if our rapes were similar. Plus, I felt such an incredible amount of grief and
Yeah.
guilt for not reporting, because I said, had I reported, she wouldn't have gotten raped too. And so for 10 years, I searched. And then after
Whew.
20 years, I finally reported with the VA here in Milwaukee, and I went to get therapy and all that.
Okay,
And
so we're
I
going to
did
stop.
file.
We're
Yeah.
going to hold there.
Okay.
We'll hold there, and we're going to take a quick break, and we're going to come back, and we'll finish. That's a really kind of good stopping point for a second. So, I know if you're watching, I know you want to hear the rest, but we're going to take a quick break and hear from our sponsors. So you're watching Bold Brave TV, The Soul's Journey, and we'll be right back.
What if there were a super tiny device that could diagnose the brain and is smaller than a single human hair? What if you could see inside the brain to help an epilepsy patient during surgery or to help the fight against Parkinson's disease? Dr. Patricia Broderick is proud to announce the Broderick Probe, a biomedical and electronic breakthrough. Imagine a probe to help with the understanding and potential cure of brain-related diseases. To learn more, listen live to the Easy Sense radio show with host Dr. Broderick, Wednesdays 7 p.m. Eastern on the Bold Brave Media Network and TuneIn Radio. And to help support the Broderick Foundation, please go to EasySense.com and learn how, with your help, we can fight these horrific brain disorders. That's EasySense.com to learn more and help support the Broderick Foundation. Author, radio show host, and coach John M. Hawkins reveals strategies to help gain perspective, build confidence, find clarity, achieve goals. John M. Hawkins' new book, Coached to Greatness, Unlock Your Full Potential with Limitless Growth, published by iUniverse. Hawkins reveals strategies to help readers accomplish more. He believes the book can coach them to greatness. Hawkins says that the best athletes get to the top of their sport with the help of coaches, mentors, and others. He shares guidance that helps readers reflect on what motivates them. Rediscover and assess their core values, philosophies, and competencies. Find settings that allow them to be the most productive and track their progress towards accomplishing goals. Listen to John Hawkins' My Strategy, Saturdays, 1 p.m. Eastern on the BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio.
And welcome back to the Soul's Journey on Bold Brave TV Network. If you're watching, we have Laura Hendricks with us as a guest, and we are talking about a really hard subject. So trigger warning. It got really deep on the first segment, but we're talking about sexual trauma and sexual abuse. And so bringing back Laura to kind of continue her story, and I'll kind of share a little bit about what happened to me as well. But Laura, I know where we left off, right? You found him after so many years.
I did, and I want women to know, and anyone who is a victim of sexual assault, whether it's a man or a woman, it's very important to report immediately, because I waited for over 20 years. My rape occurred in the state of Washington. Washington state only allows charges to be pressed up to 20 years. That's their statute. After that, you're toast. You're done. It's like double jeopardy. It doesn't matter. There's nothing you can do.
There's nothing you can do.
So, yes. So when I was finally brave enough to talk, and I finally reported to the police, the Fort Lewis Police Department and the Lakewood Police Department, because it happened in Lakewood, Washington, even though we were active duty.
Yeah.
I told them one person knew. They called her, and she sent me a message on Facebook, and she said, I know he hurt you, but forgiveness goes a long way. And come to find out, after the people that had been hiding him, I kept asking my ex-fiance and his wife, do you know where he's at? Because, they were very close at one time. Do you know where he's at? Do you know where I can find the affidavit from the crime? And they said, no. Come to find out, they had been friends with him this whole entire time. So when they called her and she messaged me on Facebook, she gave me his pseudonym on Facebook. He was going by a different first name. He went by 2 initials in his last name. I was able to locate him on Facebook. And then I went on publicinfoservices.com. Not only did I find him under his name, I found his address, phone numbers, everything. So I got one of the phone numbers. I called it, and he answered, and I was so nervous. I hung up. And I was I was recording with one cell phone because I had no cell phone. So I was recording the conversation I had him on speaker with one cell phone, and had him on speaker, and finally he answered, and I said, "Is this so and so?" He said, "Yeah," and I said, um, "My name is so and so. Do you remember me?" He said, "No." I said, "I was engaged to your best friend." He said, "Jay was married to so and so." I said, "No, before that, in the military, in the
Mhm.
barracks," and he hung up the phone.
He did.
Yes, so I tried to call him back about 20 times,
Okay. Nothing.
and then I finally found the affidavit from the crime he committed a year after mine. The rapes and assaults were similar, except hers was even more disgusting than mine.
Okay.
And he threatened to kill her. And when she
During
said
the.
she would, yes, when he was done, he said, "No, I have to kill you." And she said, "I won't tell." And she did tell, and he served 9 years in prison. Found the affidavit, found him on Public Info Services. Not only that, Public Info Services links you to all of their family members, including his son, who was
Mhm.
under one, and now it's so many years later.
Right.
So I reached out to his son. I sent him a letter off to his son's address, and I said, "I'm just letting you know I'm sorry about your dad," and blah blah blah. So I mailed the letter to his son. I said, "If you ever want to talk, let me know." I mailed the letter to his wife, and I mailed the letter to his house. And I said, "I just want to let you know. I just want you to confirm and talk to me." I said, "You will not get in trouble." I said, "I just want you to know that it's important you can confirm because you were the only other person there."
Mhm.
So, anyways, I ended up getting a notice of harassment. This is not a lie. I had gone to Fort Lewis to kind of wrap things up in my life, to go to the apartment where the rape took place, to go to the barracks where the harassment took place. The barracks were gone. Some of the barracks are gone at Fort Lewis. Went to the apartment. Someone lived there. I couldn't get in. Is the guy was kind of standing behind the door, and I said, "Well, I used to live here. Can I just come in?" Because I just wanted to see it. And he said, "No, I'm not comfortable." So I left. I tried, came back. This is 3 years ago. Came back home, and I live in Wisconsin. 5 days after I get home, I get a call from some guy saying, "I'm trying to serve you." And I said, "What are you trying to serve me for?" And I thought it was about something else regarding my estranged daughter with the car. I thought maybe she's not making the car payments. So the next thing I know, I go pick up the notice, and it
Mhm.
said my the man who raped me, his name versus my name, notice of harassment for me to appear in court in Washington State. 2 weeks later, what did I do? I
What
called
did
the
you
lawyer
do?
in Washington. Lawyer in Washington. I paid that lawyer $5,000. I
Wow.
flew out. I rented a car. They gave me an Audi. Thank God. They gave me a nice car, an Audi A5. So it was really nice.
Really
And
nice.
then, right. And then what I did was I went to court with my lawyer. It was the plaintiff. I was the defendant because he was trying to charge me with harassment. Said he hung up, and this is the kicker. Throughout my estrangement, my daughters turned towards my sister, who supported my daughters. My sister, who's always kind of been jealous. The man who raped me ended up going on social media talking to my ex fiance's wife. Got my sister's information. Was calling my sister, oldest sister, all the time. When we were in court, I found all this out. He said the reason he hung up the phone is because my family told him I was crazy and they should hang up if I called him. So I went to court, which was the very first time I ever sat in a courtroom adjacent to the man who raped me.
Who raped you?
And
That's like a
as a
movie. It's like a Lifetime
yeah,
movie.
I swear to God. And then the judge said it is normal for victims of sexual assault, sexual abuse, domestic violence to retaliate against their abuser. What I did was normal, trying to call him, trying to reach out, sending out notices to his family, etc. He said, but when she said you raped her, you nor your lawyer denied what she said. And he
Oh,
said, because of that, I believe her. I believe she's going to close the chapter on this, that she's not going to harass you, and this case is closed.
wow. What were your
I
hopes for contacting him?
The thing is when you are assaulted by someone and it is a non-consensual act
Mhm.
committed against a human being, in your mind, when it's been 5, 10, 15, 20 years, the only other person that can confirm it happened is the assailant. So you have the nightmares, you have the night terrors, you have the panic, anxiety, you don't want to live. First of all, you want an apology, and second of all, you want someone else to say, this is not a figment of your imagination. This happened, and I did this to you, and I am sorry. And
Oh,
and kind of say, why did you
wow.
choose to hurt me?
Yeah.
So
Did you get
that's
any of that?
no, he will never ever, even his son and I, the baby that was in the apartment, his son,
Oh,
connected. We are friends. He gave me so many answers about his dad, about the kind of heinous monster he is. His dad has no conscience. He is an abuser of women. I could go on and on, but he said, I am not surprised someone else came forward.
wow, Laura. Well, that must have been validating for you, right?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. So
Yeah.
that's what, and mine could be a made for TV movie.
It
Um,
really could. Yeah.
yeah.
That's what,
So what about, so
so
let's
me,
talk about you.
yeah, I want to talk about me just really quickly. Mine's a little bit different. I was probably 8 years old when mine happened, and mine happened through someone I knew. So my parents were divorced and military. So I was a military brat raised in the military. My dad was a warrant officer in the Army. And
Mhm.
when they divorced, my mom remarried with another military man. And this man would become my father, would raise me from whatever age they got divorced, probably 6, maybe, up until I graduated from high school. But what people didn't know is this man molested me, right? So when I was about eight, oh gosh, I'm third grade, whatever you are in third grade. For some reason, I remember third grade specifically. And it's so interesting when I think about the time that it happened. And it's really interesting for me because it happened once, but maybe you can attest to this, but the effects of it have been long lasting. Like
Yeah.
I can go over the act, I just can't go over what it did to my brain. So, and we'll talk about that in a second. But I remember exactly what I was wearing. And at that time, my stepdad had a drinking problem. Actually, my dad was an alcoholic. My stepdad drank. And over there, they say we were in Germany at the time. So we were in a whole nother country.
Mhm.
And he would drink German beer. And from what I understand, German beer is so much stronger. Not that that's an excuse, but I need to say that because alcohol plays a role in my life moving forward as well. And so he had been drinking. And in the middle of the night, think I'm an 8-year-old girl asleep in my bed, and I have on like khaki pants. I must have fell asleep with whatever I was wearing that day. And I have this, my favorite sweater in the whole wide world. It was like cream and purple stripes with a little bit of glitter. It was a long sleeve, fuzzy shirt, and that's kind of what I was wearing. And I even have a school picture with me wearing it that I can't even look at anymore. But my stepdad came into my room, scooped me out of bed, and he carried me down the hall and carried me into bed with my mother and him. And my mother was asleep. Put me in the middle, took off all my clothes, and proceeded to molest me with my mother in bed. Right. And then when he was done, he lit a cigarette, he smoked, and then put me back to bed. And I kept that secret from 8 years old until I was probably 19. That secret stayed with me forever. Because as an 8-year old kid, I was very cognizant of what it could do to a marriage, right? How it could hurt my mom, how it could hurt the family. And so I think, although my trauma was sexual, but keeping that secret for so long is trauma in itself as well, right? And I'm just starting to realize how that trauma affects you in your life. And so that was one instance. And I just can't believe how much the military has these predators in it, right? Because that was one
Yeah.
instance. There's another instance later on when I was in junior high, and we would always have these men over for like dinner with their families and stuff. And I remember there was another man who had come over all the time with his family. He had 2 little girls and a wife, and he was a guitar player. And I was very interested. And so he always wanted to show me how to play the guitar. And I remember him coming over, and he said, well, let's go practice. And for some reason, he wanted to go practice in a back bedroom. So I was probably, I don't know how old you are in junior high. I have a really hard time remembering all this stuff. 12, 13, maybe, not even maybe. 7th grade, I think. He took me back into the bedroom, and we're trying to play this guitar. And then all of a sudden, he's on top of me with his tongue down my throat, right? And this is a grown man, and I'm like a 12 or 13-year-old little girl. So what that all caused is a ton of fear around men in my life, right? Mm-hmm. Every person in my life that I was supposed to trust was scary, and I couldn't trust them, right? So all of a sudden, I'm in fight or flight. From that moment on, for the rest of my life, I am in constant fight or flight. So we can talk about how it affects us in the next segment if we want, but that's kind of where my trauma started. We have like 1 minute on this one, but it's so weird. I can tell that story, and it seems very minimal about what happened. But it's crazy what trauma does to your brain, right? And yours is very much more graphic, very horrible, and I sit with that. So sometimes I downplay it. I'm like, well, mine wasn't so bad. But what it did to my brain and causing fight or flight and freeze, I freeze a lot when something bad is about to happen. I go into freeze. So there's fight, flight, and freeze. And I think I ended up with all of those my entire life. And it totally affected some relationships. And we can talk about that in the next section too. Well, how's that affected us moving forward, right? And I can remember just getting married. And I married a man who may have had a sexual addiction and things. So here I am again, right? Someone I'm supposed to trust, someone who's supposed to love me. And I'm put right back in the path of abuse again, right? And so I don't know, probably a good stopping point, and then we'll come back and we'll kind of talk about how that's affected us moving forward. And then we'll use a lot to talk about how we healed. We both healed separate ways, but we're both healing from it. And so we're going to take a break. We're going to hear from our sponsors, and we'll be right back. You're watching The Soul's Journey on Bold Brave TV Network.
Did you know that your beliefs create your entire reality, but it's the subconscious beliefs that do most of the creating? Belief shifter and life coach Shiraz can help you identify those limiting beliefs and eliminate them, often in a single session.
Like it was almost instant, like I had relief right away.
Creating better health, relationships, careers, and finances. Let Shiraz help you step out of safety and into awareness.
Definitely something's happening. It's like a flow inside. It feels good.
Whether in person or online, Shiraz provides personal coaching, belief shifting. Visit Shiraz at energeticmagic.com or call 416-529-7429. Energetic Magic on the BBM Global Network, Tuesdays at 7 p.m. Eastern. Find your greater happiness. Be well. Be aware. Be magical.
Are you struggling to care for elderly parents or a spouse? Do you wonder if being a caregiver is making you sick? Are you worried about taking time off work to care for elderly parents and balance work, life, and caregiving? Has caregiving become exhausting and emotionally draining? Are you an aging adult who wants to remain independent, but you're not sure how? I'm Pamela D. Wilson. Join me for the Caring Generation radio show for caregivers and aging adults, Wednesday evenings, 6 Pacific, 7 Mountain, 8 Central, and 9 Eastern, where I answer these questions and share tips for managing stress, family relationships, health, well-being, and more. Podcasts and transcripts of The Caring Generation are on my website, PamelaDWilson.com, plus my caregiving library, online caregiver support programs, and programs for corporations interested in supporting working caregivers. Help, hope, and support for caregivers is here on The Caring Generation and PamelaDWilson.com.
And you're back watching The Soul's Journey on Bold Brave TV Network. And I'm going to bring back Laura, and I'm going to finish kind of my story. So that was the trauma. It happened. What ended up with me in the psychological sense is it's really interesting. Seeking out love, yet being afraid of the opposite sex.
Yes.
At the same time. Very contradicting in the brain, right? But I sought out love. So I fell in love at 14. Right.
Oh, yeah.
I ended up having sex very young age.
Yep.
even with that sexual trauma, having an abortion at 15. So, you know, that those acts played into my life moving forward for
Yeah.
sure. But it wasn't until I think I was 19 and it finally came out. One of my friends at the time felt it was necessary to tell my mom. And so, how my mom decided to handle it was call me home and call a family meeting in her bedroom. So, it was me, my stepdad, and her. Didn't know what it was about, got called into the bedroom, and then she confronted us both. So, that's how she decided to handle it. He apologized. He said he didn't remember anything and that he had been drinking, right? So, it was alcohol. And of course, I'm trying to play it down because now I'm in this really weird situation, right? I am being faced with him, I'm being faced with her, and then the next week, I'm we're I realize he's moved out. He's gone to Korea on assignment, and so I figure out years later, probably this year, me and my mom finally had a talk because I felt some resentment towards my mother, and because you know, back when you're 19, I didn't realize my mom's life just fell apart, right? And so she would be crying. Her marriage fell apart after this happened. But I felt she was crying over him. So I became very triggered that how can you cry over a man who hurt your daughter like that? Like I couldn't
Right.
understand. So I held on to so much resentment all of my life because the person who was supposed to protect me was crying over this man, right? Now I can realize, we've talked recently. She lost everything, right? She lost a husband. Her whole world got turned upside down. And I can understand that as a woman. And then she did tell me she doesn't remember that or ever saying that she had said a long time ago that he left because he didn't want to face what happened to you, right? And I wonder if he'd ever come back. And that, I don't know, something to that effect. And that sat with me too. So we talked just recently, and she said she doesn't remember ever saying that, but she did say that she threatened him that you either leave and go on assignment or I'm going to turn you in. And I asked myself, well, why was that even a choice? Right? And that just goes to show that generation didn't talk about these things. They didn't, she
No.
would rather have let him go than see anybody get into trouble
Yes.
or him, his career, and get turned into the military. So he got away with it. He went on to molest my sister, which is his biological daughter. Again, why? She didn't believe it would happen to someone he was biologically related to, and it did. So a lot of things went on to happen, and he's never been held accountable for it. He lives in the state of Washington now with his family. Right? He's old. He's in his 70s now, but we've never seen him again. I've never had any contact with him again. And that's kind of where it's led and left off at. So that's kind of my story. But just getting into how it's affected me, because again, we don't realize that, but I can remember being married sometimes. When you're married, sometimes having intimacy becomes a chore, right?
Yes.
Well, during some of those times where I felt like I was being forced, I would get so triggered. I would kick this person off of the bed and off of me, not even understanding why. Like, why did that? Right. So, my trigger, I think, came in anger because I had no control, right? Or I had to be so quiet, or I had to have such control all those years of not saying anything, right? And he lived with us this entire time. So, even as developing as a teenager, the comments, he used to follow me if I would go out with my boyfriend on a date, being that overprotective parent. But I think there was something else in play too, making me lay with him on the couch when we'd watch TV as a teenager, like things like that. So constant, always watching my back, always making sure my doors were locked. So fight or flight, all growing up. And that led into adulthood. So how did it affect your relationships? Did you get triggered a lot? Did it come through in anger? How was it showing up for you?
I married a man who abused me. I think I mentioned this in the first podcast,
Yeah.
emotionally and mentally. He didn't know I was assaulted. He just knew my oldest daughter had a different biological father than the second one we had. So he, it was terrifying to live with him because he would call me names. No guy's going to want you because you have two kids by two different guys, blah, blah, blah. And I lived in fear. And I have letters from him, this is not a lie, where he writes, I hope we can be intimate tonight, wink, wink. I went to the doctor when my girls were probably 3 and 4 years old. I was 25. I went to the doctor and I said, I have no sex drive. And I realized, not only from my assault, but because I was being verbally and emotionally and mentally assaulted by my then husband so often, that my body literally started to shut down. Anything regarding me being a woman, me having sexual desires,
Yeah.
I had absolutely none. In the letters my ex, well, at that time, my husband would write, "Oh, I hope we can be intimate. I hope tonight's the night." I told my doctor, I have no desire. So not only that happened, but the fear and what I heard was, when you don't process a trauma, traumas are meant to flow out. When you talk about them, they flow out and you're allowed to process. But when
Yes.
you don't allow a trauma to process, it gets stuck right here. And
Yeah.
then you live with irrational thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. So I would be walking in a parking lot and a man would be walking not too far, getting into his car, and I would have to stop and I'd say, I'm going to get raped. And so you live with these irrational
Yep.
fears your
Yeah.
entire life.
Tired.
And then I thought, if I can just add, when someone takes your body from you and takes your rights as a human being and as a woman and as a girl away from you, and they steal that from you, you believe any man that asks anything of you has a right to do what they want with you. So if a man, you go out on a date, he says, "Give me a blowjob," you're like, "Oh, okay," because you feel people have rights over you.
Right.
If they want to have a one night stand, okay, no problem. So I fell into, after my first and second marriage, I was like, I'm not doing this anymore. I fell into a friends with benefits relationship for 6 years.
Yep.
And he had a relationship on the side. I had no idea, because we'd hook up, I'd come home, and I justify it to say, well, I have my friends for love and I have him for the physical. So I have a full pizza, I have a full platter, but I would never thought I was good enough
Me
for
too.
a good man, because I was damaged goods, I was trash, I was broken, I was garbage, because that's all I ever heard, and that's what all I ever thought I was good for.
Me too. I had a, sorry to interrupt you, but it's just so similarities. It's crazy. After my divorce, I got into a situation too for 15 years.
Mhm.
And I was hidden, right? I wasn't allowed to be public with this relationship because he had a family
Mhm.
or whatever. But for me, people ask, well, why did you stay? Well, why did you stay 15 years? It was safe, right?
Yes,
It was
absolutely.
safe.
Because twice a year I would say to this person, you have to allow me to be a woman twice a year, where I have feelings and I'm going to ask if you want a relationship and why don't
Yep.
you want to date me. And
Yep.
the whole thing about us hooking up, this is not a lie. This is how it went. He would text me. My
Yep.
body literally would start to shake. It was like a drug, an addiction. I'd start to
Yep.
shake and I'm like, oh my gosh. I'd meet him halfway between my house and his house. He was about 45 minutes. So we'd meet at a certain point. We go from that certain point. It was McDonald's parking lot. Go from the
Wow.
McDonald's parking lot to his beautiful home. We would hook up. After we were done, he'd drop me back off at my car at McDonald's and I'd drive home. No birthdays, no holidays. When my dad passed away, he said, well, I'm sorry. It was only physical. There was
No
nothing
emotional
else.
support. Hmm.
Nothing, because that's all I was ever good for. And
Sorry.
then to find out, for during that time he had a girlfriend and she had kids and they didn't have
Yeah.
children together. But yeah, that's the same rut I fell into. Is I
Yeah.
took what I could get. I took the crumbs because I was not worth more.
Yes, me too. I wasn't worthy of a true relationship, right?
Mhm.
And then it became
Mhm.
safe. I saw you once a week, twice, 2 weeks out of the year, and it became safe. I knew what to expect, right? Just became
Yeah.
safe, you know? And I never wanted to go online dating. I never wanted to date because it was scary. I would be in
Yeah.
fear, right? So
Mhm.
safety was a big issue for me personally because things happened with my ex-husband too that came out later. I
Yep.
was again with another predator. even being married. And like, it's just over and over, this same things keep happening to me. So I'm lucky where we're at now, but I want to talk about you. What did you do to heal? Like, where were you at? What made you decide, okay, it's time?
Well, I kind of was at the, I was kind of like Alice in Wonderland, falling down the rabbit hole. I think that's the applicable term. I was going down the rabbit hole, and I was waking up every day, PTSD, anxiety, and all this, and I just realized I didn't want to. It's not that I didn't want to live. I didn't want to live like that anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And I walked into the mental health clinic at the VA, and I said, I need to be admitted. If I don't get admitted, I don't know what I'm going to do.
Okay.
So they took me seriously. I went into the clinic. They got me admitted into the VA, Milwaukee VA. It's called DOM 123. It's for up to veterans can stay. A normal term is like 3 to 6 months, or some people actually live there for long term. And they got me admitted. I went to the VA. I said, I'm kind of doing my own thing, and I'm sleeping around, and
Yeah.
it was
normal.
kind
Promiscuous. Yeah.
of, right. And I said, I'm hooking up with someone, and there was kind of like no shame in my game. I thought, I'm an adult, I can do what I want. And I had the women telling me, do you hear what you're saying? Do you not realize your worth? And I didn't realize my worth because I didn't have any. So I went into the VA inpatient. I was there for 3 months the first time, because I was there twice. And I went through cognitive processing therapy. Now it's called CPT for short. So what you do is your therapist says, okay, what happened? So you talk about it. And she says, okay, you're going to write down your rape. And I'm like, what? So 14 pages later, I'm sitting there, and she says, you're going to read it out loud. So you're reading it word for word, and you're literally sobbing and you're crying, and you're like, okay, I'll get through this. And you do. And then she says, that's short and sweet. And then she says, okay, you're going to rewrite it, but you're going to add all the senses to it. What did you see, touch, taste, feel, and hear?
All right. We got to take a break on that one, and then we'll talk about that. You're at a good point. Okay, so we'll be right back. You're watching The Soul's Journey on Bull Brave TV Network. Gosh. Whew.
Author, radio show host, and coach John M. Hawkins reveals strategies to help gain perspective, build confidence, find clarity, achieve goals. John M. Hawkins' new book, Coached to Greatness, Unlock Your Full Potential with Limitless Growth, published by iUniverse. Hawkins reveals strategies to help readers accomplish more. He believes the book can coach them to greatness. Hawkins says that the best athletes get to the top of their sport with the help of coaches, mentors, and others. He shares guidance that helps readers reflect on what motivates them, rediscover and assess their core values, philosophies, and competencies, find settings that allow them to be the most productive, and track their progress towards accomplishing goals. Listen to John Hawkins' My Strategy, Saturdays, 1 p.m. Eastern on the BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio. Did you know that your beliefs create your entire reality, but it's the subconscious beliefs that do most of the creating? Belief shifter and life coach Shiraz can help you identify those limiting beliefs and eliminate them, often in a single session.
Like, it was almost instant. Like, I had relief right away.
Creating better health, relationships, careers, and finances. Let Shiraz help you step out of safety and into awareness.
Definitely something's happening. It's like a flow inside. It feels good.
Whether in person or online, Shiraz provides personal coaching, belief shifting. Visit Shiraz at energeticmagic.com or call 416-529-7429. Energetic Magic on the BBM Global Network, Tuesdays at 7 p.m. Eastern. Find your greater happiness. Be well. Be aware. Be magical.
Hi, you're back watching The Soul's Journey on Bull Brave TV Network, and we are talking today about sexual trauma. Really hard, trigger warning, this was a really hard episode, and we are talking with my guest, Laura Hendricks. Come on in, Laura. And I wanted to say too, like, a part of my journey, what helped me, I wrote my book, and that was a way, again, we come from a generation where you're seen, not heard. And I still struggle with that sometimes. Like, I hate being interrupted in conversations, right? So some of this stuff still plays out with me. Like, let me have my voice, right? So I did. So this is my book, You Can Be a Medium. And it's kind of my memoir in the beginning of all the trauma I faced. And I talk about my sexual trauma in the book. So it kind of gave me a voice without a platform to deliver it, if that makes any sense, right? But I got it out into the world. And I know people have been hurt by my book a little bit because I talk about it, but I hope that people can understand how important it was for me to have a voice again, because I felt like I lost it and everybody kept taking it from me. And no one ever wanted to listen and no one wanted to hear me. I remember writing my dad a letter after this had all happened. And my dad was living in Germany, and I wrote it. And I remember signing it. And this is so interesting how cognitive a child is. I signed it in a lowercase t because that's how worthy I felt of even my name. I was old enough to know to capitalize it by purposely, and I remember this, did not capitalize the T because that's how unworthy I felt, right? So I hope people understand this is therapeutic for Laura and I. We want to talk about it. We want to have a voice when we want to share. And it means so much to me that people are listening. So I'm going to hand it back off to Laura and let her finish her story on her healing journey. And then we'll give you some advice on what you can do. All right, go ahead, Laura.
After I wrote down the trauma, then I went back and wrote down all the senses associated with the trauma. I found out what my trigger points were. For instance, I can't have people walking behind me because I was flipped over and sodomized from what would be considered from behind. I can't have anyone in line behind me standing within a certain. So sometimes if I'm in line, I'll move to the side, give myself more space.
Please.
I had a lot of triggers, so I learned what my triggers were so I could work through it in my mind. Judge and jury, okay, you're going to be okay. You have no basis to believe this is going to happen. You're going to be okay. And so I learned to process. I talked about it. I released it. I gave it back. I released the power it had over me. What I did, and the words, do you want me to share the words I believe will help people?
What if I do?
Well, I remember thinking after I was traumatized that I was not worth anything. And I punished myself by being in only hookup situations. And then I thought to myself, why am I punishing myself for what someone else did? For what someone else did to me? Why am I allowing this person to control the rest of my life and make me a lesser valued person? So it was after that I decided I was completely worthy, all of me. You take it all or you don't get anything. So I had to revamp my idea of intimacy, my idea of the person I was going to spend time with. And I said, I'm only, and this is, swear to God, what worked for me. I said, I'm only going to be intimate with a man that knows and loves the people of value in my life. My cousin, my cousin's boys, my sister, whatever the case is. And I'm only going to be with someone whose family loves me too. Because it's not going to be temporary. It's going to be permanent and long term. I'm not settling for temporary anymore. So then I changed my whole idea and mindset regarding my value. And I said, take all of me or none of me. This is who I am. And I'm going to tell the person I'm with, this is what happened to me. It's not going to define me, but this is who I am. And then I met the guy. Of course, you met your person too.
Yeah.
But it took, for me, I had to heal. Had I not healed, I would be friends with benefits. I wouldn't be in a relationship. If it would be temporary. I would be at the bottom of the barrel again.
Yeah.
So, tell me about you.
Yeah, no, I went through a whole healing journey on my own. I did self-healing, so I never went to actual therapy, but I did the whole, like the journaling, the meditating, the sitting and the processing the feelings and reliving it again and being able to process it again. And writing my book was therapy for me because it gave me my voice again. So yeah, I have done some of the work. I still get triggered. And then that's how I figured out that alcohol was a trigger for me because of the alcohol involvement. So learning that it was not the alcohol, it was the man has been a big aha moment for me, right? Because it would just bother me. And I'm with someone who loves craft beer and things like that. So I'm on the road to healing. And so I hope that all of you, we only got 30 seconds left. So any last minute things you want to tell our audience?
I just want to say, if someone has damaged you or has inflicted pain on you, please share your story with other survivors or someone you know will help. Please understand that not talking about it will eat you alive from the inside out, will diminish your life. Please talk about it. Please report as soon as you can, because some states have certain statutes. Because my assailant went on to assault someone else,
Yeah.
and it was even worse the second time, and there might be other victims, but please talk. Don't hold on to this, and don't feel ashamed, because this is not your guilt to hold on to.
Perfect. And with that, I'll leave us with a closing message. You know, spiritually speaking, we all go through things, but you're meant to overcome them and you're meant to heal from it, because there is a lovely life to live after that, right? A lot of things happen to us, but we can learn from them. So what are you learning from the experience? And so I would encourage my listeners kind of to go spiritual. That's what the show. I'm a spiritual person. I'm a medium. That's what I do. So that's kind of helped me on my journey, is connecting to source and spiritually, and why did this happen, and learn from that. So I encourage you guys to do that. Again, I wrote about it in my book. If you're not alone. So if you want to read it, it's on Amazon. It's called You Can Be a Medium, but it really does tell the journey of my trauma. And then anybody who has a TikTok, I found, and I'll leave this as a closing, I just duetted a video on TikTok about an Oprah Winfrey special, and I think you can find it on YouTube. There's an Oprah Winfrey special. If you put Oprah Inner Child Healing, there is a doctor who comes on there and does a 7-minute meditation, and I swear it changed my brain. It's kind of like an EDMR session, therapy session, but I did it, and the next 2 days, I could tell myself not getting triggered. Like something happened within me. So I encourage people, go listen to that if there's an inner child that you need healing, because that's kind of what I'm working on right now, my inner child. I encourage you to go watch the TikTok or go find it on YouTube and go try it. It may help you. And Laura, I would love for you to go check it out too, just to see. Okay?
I will.
Will you?
Awesome.
Yes, please do. Laura, thank you for being on. I'm sure we're going to do this again. I know we're going to find another thing in common. I'm sure we will. But I want to say thank you. And to all of our listeners, thank you for all the support. This is our 3rd episode. Yeah, your purpose in life is to find joy. So if there's something keeping you from joy, I want you to work into finding it. Find your joy. All right?
Yeah.
And with that, you're watching The Soul's Journey on Bold Brave TV Network, and we'll see you again next week. Thank you for watching.
This has been The Soul's Journey with your host, Tracy Escobar. Tune in each week and be inspired through the voices of those living the journey and those who have already passed on. Fridays, 5 p.m. Eastern on the Bold Brave TV Network.